Okay, chapter 3. What story are we reading?
She's behind trees.
She's behind trees. All right, so now he feels like he's kind of a big stuff because he actually lived up to his name, right? What did he do to live up to his name?
He found the bone needle.
He found the bone needle. For someone he kind of looks up to, right? So it's kind of like he has a crush on this girl. What's her name? Diver, right. Okay, so chapter 3, sees behind trees. Overnight, I went from being myself to being a person who was expected to know things. I could feel people watching me, their glances like high, soft grass I walked through. Ooh, that's kind of a cool piece of figurative language there, right? What was the figurative language?
Metaphor.
Think about it. Let's read it again.
Similar.
What made you think that?
I saw like.
Ooh, very smart. Like high, soft grass I walked through. I couldn't be sure, but I thought they were talking about me as well as about my special sight that was better than ordinary eyes, about how amazingly I had identified gray fire and how quickly I had found Diver's needle. I noticed a difference in the way I was treated, about how when I visited my relatives, I was served my food immediately after the old ones, keep still please, how uncles and aunts hurried and to make room for me in the eating circle, how older cousins didn't laugh anymore when I greeted them by the wrong names until they got closer to me, or when I stumbled on a log or bumped in the yard into a yard pole. I liked these differences very much. Soon they no longer surprised me. A little while after that, I began to expect them. Sees behind trees, my mother called to me one morning when I failed to come outside for breakfast. It's time to get up. Brantley, do me a favor and sit up when you're reading so I can see that you're following along, please. I'm not ready yet. I'm thinking with my eyes closed. A cool breeze sifted through the places where the wood of the house walls did not meet, and I was too comfortable to move. It's cornflakes, warm from the hearth. And then I need you to help me patch the roof, my father said. Save at least 2 of them for me. I tried to speak without rousing myself, to murmur from some place other than from my body. For when I'm finished thinking, there was long time of quiet then, and I imagined that my family was whispering so that they would not distract me from whatever important thing I was doing. I let my mind wander, drift, and sail like an orange maple leaf through the blue air. Every part of my body fit perfectly against the mat I was lying upon. My legs and arms and my head and back all equally heavy and pleasantly balanced. I let my hidden eyes look where they wanted, which was nowhere. Water, I sensed water. I sniffed at its unmistakable odor. Do you ever think water could have an odor?
No.
He's picking up something though, isn't he? A pale wetness. I ran my tongue along the surface of my lips, straining toward the beginnings of being thirsty. The water pooled in the cup of palms, swirled gently over rocks in the creek, glided in long drips down the side of smooth bark, and then poured on my face. I sat up, coughing and rubbing my eyes and spitting and shaking my head. Think about that, Brigadier laughed, and he knelt beside me to the place he must have silently crept, holding a bowl that was now empty. That was not funny, I said very loud. My uncle had always been kind to me, a better friend than any boy my own age, and for him to play a mean joke just when I was so happy with myself at last seemed not fair, worse than if someone else had done the same thing. For the first time in my life, I was angry with Brigadier and confused by him and shocked to be mistrustful of him. The smile fell from his lips at my tone, but he didn't move except to sit next to me. He touched my wrist lightly with his fingers. It will be funny, he said, when you think of it the right way. How can the same thing be both funny and not funny. Do you guys ever do that? Like something at first wasn't funny at all, and then you ponder on it later on and it makes you kind of giggle a little bit. It's like, yeah, I guess that was kind of funny. You know, like when the madness wears off. Yeah. You have to see the joke, Brings the Deer explained. You have to learn to laugh at yourself. And that's a hard thing to do, to be able to laugh at yourself. Will you laugh if I dump water on you when you're asleep tonight? Kind of turn of events. He thought about my question. I doubt it, he said finally. But in any case, I would probably get up and throw you in the pond. Because you're bigger and stronger than I am. The unfairness, well, it has nothing to do with size. At night, I have a right to be sleeping. But if you choose to sleep when you should be awake, funny things can happen to you. The pressure of his fingers became more insistent on my skin, as if his hands were asking mine to understand what he meant. Come on outside now, nephew. There's nothing to keep you from the day. After all, your face is already washed. And all that morning, I felt unsure about myself as I worked beside my father, preparing the hole in the roof where the rain had found its entrance. The sun was hot on my back, and small insects buzzed about my ears. The cloudy autumn sky was a constant white that stretched off forever. I had to bend close to tie the bunches of dry yellow grass that when I tucked tightly into the rotted out space. It seemed such an ordinary job to be doing after suddenly becoming grown up, such an everyday task, such a waste of my time. Now, what do you guys think about this? Such an ordinary task. What does he mean by that? Such a waste of his time. What do you think about his ego?
He doesn't like going there.
Why doesn't he think he should be doing ordinary tasks anymore?
Because
he can,
doesn't think he's ordinary.
He don't think he's ordinary, and he can actually like see far away.
So he thinks he's got this special talent. So do you think he thinks he's too good for that now? Yeah. I was watching this show about Roman leaders a couple of weeks ago, and one of the leaders had his son helping him build a fence, and they were like hammering the posts in. And the son was asking his dad, we're the leaders. Why should we be doing these menial tasks? And the leader told his son, it's important for all the common folk to see us do these tasks so they know that we're still perfectly capable to do any job in our village. So that push comes to shove, we are perfectly able to do whatever we need to. We can do anything from the lowly job to the highest job, so that you can count on us for whatever needs to happen, whatever needs to occur, that we're still perfectly skilled. See, it's important to know that we're perfectly skilled, that we're not too good for any task. But it looks like Sees Behind Trees thinks that he's too good, right? And now think about what his father is trying to get him to do in these next couple paragraphs. Think closely about his ego and what he's saying here. Do you remember what happens to the skin of your fingers after you've been swimming in the pond too long? My father asked from below as he handed up more grass. Swimming in a cool pond sounded like a very good idea. Kind of scrunched together, I answered. Puckered like grapes that are too ripe. You guys know, can you visualize your fingers after you've been in the pool or lake or even the bath too long?
I know what it looks like.
Yeah, they get all raisin looking. Right. Well, that's how your face looks today. Surely Brings the Deer didn't have that much water in his little bowl. Because of his high and mighty attitude, the whole time he's doing his job, his face is all scrunched together like he's mad, right? Like your face gets like puckered together. I raised my hand to my forehead, and it was true. It was all pulled into lines and shadow wrinkles. My lips were as pursed as a clam that doesn't want to open, and my neck was stiff on my shoulders, hunched high like the wings of a sleeping bat. Every day can't be unusual, my father said gently. Otherwise, something wonderful wouldn't mean much when it happened. I thought about his words and my body began to relax. But I thought everything was supposed to change when I grew up. It does, my father assured me, and yet it doesn't. Well, how can both of those things be true? Well, you're still fixing the roof, my father pointed out, just as you did last year and the year before that. Your weight is still light enough to allow you to be on top of our house without falling through. So it's all just as it was? Why had I always been told that getting a new name was so important? Why had I worried about it so much? Not quite, my father said. He reached up and he squeezed my bare foot. The difference is, now you and I are having a conversation between men. What he said was so simple, and yet it startled me more than a crash of thunder. My father and I, we were both men. A shiver ran like a laugh through my back. You mean you are talking to me the same way you would talk to Brings the Deer? I asked, not quite believing this could be possible. Certainly not, my father replied. But before I could be disappointed, he continued. Brings the Deer is my brother-in-law, and I like him very much. But you, ceased behind trees, you are my son. I had never quite understood the dividing line between not being grown up and being a grown-up. It seems as though there was some invisible doorway a person walked through, and when he came out on the other side, he was supposed to be all that he had been before, except more. Yes, I was still my father's son. Yes, I was still Brings the Deer's nephew. Yes, I had learned how to do something new, to see with my ears and to back up what I had heard with questions that might help me see more sharply. But I was no smarter than I had been. I was not ready to be a warrior or a hunter or to be a husband or a father. I didn't know how to build a house or sing the late night songs. I didn't know how to be quiet when it made no sense to speak or to speak when everyone else was silent. I didn't know how to find the special herbs and plants that made medicine, didn't know how to talk to the other grown-up people in ways that were both respectful and equal. No matter what anyone else thought, no matter how often Diva repeated her story, no matter how much my mother and the rest of my family bragged about me, I knew who I wasn't. I wasn't who they thought I was. I was still just me with a different name. How did other people do it? Had it been easier for them to catch up to their new selves? Or was everyone secretly two people at the same time? One of them largely pretend? I tried to think of the most completely grown-up person I knew, and Greyfire, the man I had heard in the woods, came to my mind. He had a calmness, as if he lived in a place that didn't require any neighbors. Of course, he was polite, but there was still a distance about him. He seemed content with himself, with making his pictures on bark, stringing his shells, and doing his quill work. Though the Werewants and his sister, and though neither of them had ever married or had children, you never saw them joking and heard them laughing together. I didn't even know if they ate their meals from the same bowl. Was needing to be with no one else what it meant to be a grown-up? And if that was true, I had received my name too soon, because I hated to be alone, and I avoided it whenever possible. I slept curled up next to whichever brother I could find, and all night we would roll and switch positions on the mat, kicking or punching each other, getting close for warmth on cold evenings, and waking each other if we had an interesting or scary dream. During the day, I was always doing some work for my mother or father, or following Brings the Deer, or running off in the afternoons with boys my age to swim, or making secret pathways in the high grass. And when I was little, I hated the game we sometimes played, the one where a person had to close his eyes and everyone else would hide away. When my turn came, I always looked around and saw, well, I saw nothing but the closest trees or cornfields or the blur of distant houses. I ran in circles, calling, pleading, until finally every other player gave up and came out. When someone else had to search, I made sure by not hiding at all, that I was the first one to be found. At least that game was different now. Ever since my mother had taught me about seeing with my ears, I could find every player, usually without moving from where I stood. They never let me be it anymore. And sometimes now that I was supposed to be grown up, I made a test for myself. I would sneak off, leap up into the pond so that my ears were blocked by water, hold my breath, and float face down. But as soon as I thought, this is what it's like to be alone, I scrambled for the surface, threw myself on the bank, rubbed my hands among the pebbles, and wondered loudly where everyone had gone. Without somebody to watch me, laugh at my jokes, tell me what to do, ask me questions, race me to the river, make me guess the names of birds, or challenge me to count the silvery fish in the school, there was nothing for me to do. Without somebody to be somebody to, it was as though I wasn't somebody to myself. You only feel that way because your eyes are weak, Three Chances decided when at last I confessed my problem to him. They are not weak, I protested. Try seeing behind a tree, I wanted to dare him. What I mean is, he continued as if he hadn't heard me, you get alone faster than other people. He could tell that I didn't understand, so he tried again. Your alone space is smaller. And he held out both of his arms and he turned around in a circle. Anything beyond that, and your eyes might as well not even be there. But, I started to say, how did he know this about me? Me, on the other hand, Three Chances went on, well, I can see as far as I can throw a rock. And that far away, there are bound to be people. So really, I'm never alone like you are. You really can see as far as you can throw a rock? This sounded impossible to me. Yet Three Chances claimed it as calmly that I couldn't help but take him seriously. Well, in daylight, he said. At night, the rock would probably hit somebody and then I'd get in trouble. Well, now Three Chances was making sense to me because at night, with the sounds of sleeping and whispering, the vibration of bat wings swooping in the air, and the low crackles of dying fires on every side of me, well, I didn't feel so much by myself. At night, I could see as far as I could throw a rock. How far can you throw a rock? I asked Three Chances, wondering which one of us was stronger. Well, you'll never know, he laughed, making fun of me. Well, I know where your foot is, I said, and I stamped on it. Ouch! Three Chances shouted. You better watch out, sees behind trees. Some night, when you don't expect it, I'm gonna sneak up on you and make you sorry. Just try it, I said, thankful that he had said night.